Something has shifted. Something measurable, something visible, and something that the people closest to Donald Trump are clearly aware of, even if they will not say so publicly. The President of the United States is lashing out, not in the calculated, strategic way that has defined his political brand for a decade, the punching back twice as hard, the dominating the news cycle, the turning every attack into an opportunity. This is different. Political analysts, longtime Trump observers, and even some voices within his own orbit are beginning to describe what they are seeing as desperation. And when you look at the evidence, at the polls, at the legal losses, at the economic numbers, at the fractures within his own coalition, it is very difficult to argue with that characterization. The writing, as more than one observer has put it, is on the wall. And this is the story of what that writing actually says. Start with the polling. Presidential approval ratings are never the whole story of a presidency, but they are a critically important indicator of where a president stands with the public and what political space they have to maneuver. Trump's numbers have been moving in a direction that should concern anyone who is invested in the success of his administration. His approval ratings have declined consistently across multiple polls from multiple different polling organizations, including polls that have historically shown more favorable results for him. The decline is not dramatic in any single poll, but the consistency across different methodologies in different pollsters creates a picture that is difficult to dismiss as statistical noise. More specifically, the erosion is happening among groups that should be alarming to the administration. Independent voters, who are always the decisive bloc in any election because they are not automatically committed to either party, have been moving away from Trump at a rate that the White House cannot be comfortable with. The economic concerns generated by tariff policies and market volatility are showing up clearly in polls that ask Americans about their economic confidence and their assessment of the administration's handling of the economy. And perhaps most significantly, there are signs of softening even among some segments of Trump's base, the working-class voters and rural communities who were supposed to be the bedrock of his coalition, and whose economic interests his presidency was most explicitly promised to serve. The desperation shows up most clearly in the volume and the targets of Trump's public attacks. The sheer number of institutions, individuals, and entities that he is simultaneously going after has reached a level that even longtime Trump watchers describe as unusual. Judges who have ruled against his policies have been attacked publicly and personally in ways that have drawn formal rebukes from legal institutions and fellow judges. The Federal Reserve Chairman has been repeatedly targeted with demands for rate cuts and threats of removal. Media organizations have faced escalating rhetorical attacks. Allies who have expressed any degree of concern or criticism have been publicly called out. Universities, law firms, and cultural institutions have all found themselves in the crosshairs. The breadth of the targets is itself a signal. When a political leader is operating from a position of strength, they can afford to be selective. They can choose their battles, ignore smaller provocations, and focus their energy on the fights that matter most. When a political leader begins attacking everything simultaneously, it suggests a loss of strategic discipline that comes from feeling under pressure from multiple directions at once. The frantic quality of some of Trump's recent public communications has been noted by analysts across the political spectrum as something different from the calculated aggression that defined his earlier political performances. The legal losses compound the political picture. As documented in recent weeks, the administration has suffered an extraordinary string of defeats in federal courts across the country. Executive actions have been blocked, deportations have been halted, funding freezes have been reversed, and personnel decisions have been challenged in ways that have produced judicial rulings that directly contradict the administration's stated legal positions. Each individual loss can be explained or minimized. The pattern of losses, the sheer number and consistency of them, is much harder to explain away. And the administration's response to those losses, escalating attacks on the judges who issued the rulings rather than adjusting its legal approach, has itself been read by many observers as a sign of frustration rather than confidence. The economic story is perhaps the most politically dangerous dimension of what the administration is facing. Trump's return to the White House was built significantly on a promise of economic strength, of prosperity, of bringing back manufacturing and jobs, of making deals that would benefit American workers. The early economic results of his second term have not matched that promise. Markets have been volatile in ways that have affected the retirement savings and investment accounts of millions of Americans. Inflation, while lower than its peak, has not returned to comfortable levels, and tariff policies being implemented are being identified by economists and by businesses as inflationary pressures that could push prices higher in the months ahead. Consumer confidence has fallen, business investment has slowed, and the fundamental economic anxiety that affects so many American families has not been meaningfully relieved. For a political brand built so heavily on economic performance, these numbers are a serious problem. People vote their economic experience. When they feel financially secure and confident about the future, they tend to reward the political leadership in place. When they feel anxious, uncertain, and financially pressured, they look for change. The polling data on economic confidence is not showing a public that feels the economic promises of the Trump administration are being delivered. The fractures within the coalition tell their own story. Marjorie Taylor Greene talking publicly about a changed Trump. Republican senators like Tom Tillis openly criticizing the quality of advice the president is receiving. Even figures within the broader MAGA ecosystem raising questions about whether the agenda being pursued by the administration reflects the priorities that brought Trump's working-class voters to the polls. These are not the sounds of a coalition holding together with confidence and momentum. These are the sounds of a coalition that is beginning to question itself. The administration's response to all of this has been to double down on the tariffs, on the confrontational posture toward institutions, on the attacks on critics, and on the judiciary. Doubling down is a strategy that has worked for Trump before, notably in his first term when he faced overwhelming criticism and seems to thrive on it. The question that his allies and his opponents are both asking right now is whether the political environment of his second term is different enough from his first that doubling down is the wrong response to the current moment. There is a critical difference between then and now that matters enormously. During his first term, Trump was always fighting from the position of the insurgent, the outsider, taking on the establishment. Even when he was in the White House, he maintained the political identity of someone fighting against a system that was rigged against him and against the people who supported him. That identity was politically powerful because it aligned him emotionally and symbolically with his base of voters who felt the same way about the system. In his second term, Trump is the establishment. He controls the executive branch. His party controls Congress. He has appointed multiple Supreme Court justices who have shaped the court's direction. The judges ruling against him were in many cases appointed by presidents of his own party. The federal agencies that are not doing what he wants are agencies whose leadership he controls. When things go wrong in this environment, the political accountability lands differently. You cannot credibly blame the deep state for your failures when you have spent months firing the deep state and replacing it with your own people. That is the fundamental political trap that the lashing out and the desperation reflect. The administration came in promising to deliver. The courts are blocking delivery. The economy is not delivering what was promised. The allies who were supposed to fall in line are pushing back. The coalition members who were supposed to be grateful are asking questions. And the usual response of fighting back against external enemies is becoming less effective when the problems increasingly have internal origins. Support draining away is not a sudden collapse. It is a gradual erosion that becomes visible in polls, in special election results, in the tone of public statements from people who were previously loyalists, in the declining enthusiasm of the base, and in the increasingly frantic messaging from the top. It is a process that can be reversed if the right course corrections are made at the right time. It can also accelerate dramatically dramatically if the economic situation worsens, if more legal defeats accumulate, or if a major unexpected crisis exposes the vulnerabilities that the current turbulence has been revealing. The writing is on the wall, whether the people in the White House are reading it clearly and accurately, and whether they are capable of responding to what it says in a way that changes the trajectory is the central political question of this moment. A president lashing out in desperation is a president who knows the numbers. The question is what he does about them.